The dietary guidelines for Americans were revamped and released within the last week. So what's it mean for you, for me, for the eating public, and more importantly, for the business of agriculture? I'll give you my hot takes. First off, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers, but you got to ask the bigger question. Does anybody actually pay attention to what the government tells us to do when it comes to your dinner plate? Well, it does have some effect. Certainly school lunches, nutrition programs, and obviously these guidelines are impacted by the food industry, which has a huge lobby. The dietary guidelines were begun in 1980 under President Reagan. They are revamped every 5 years. The most recent pyramid, the one that came out last week, inverts the pyramid from what it had been, and it probably was due. Why am I saying that? Well, let's look at what the guidelines have gotten us. In 1980, we were around single-digit obesity. Now we're at 42% obesity. 3/4 of the country, 2/3 to 3/4 of the country is overweight. We're at 11% diabetic, most of which is type 2 diabetes, which we used to call adult onset diabetes, which is usually because of ill health and being overweight. So, to say that the dietary guidelines don't have any effect because nobody really pays attention, well, something seems to be working against the Americans' health. Our life expectancy is actually not increasing for the last 5 years as it had been throughout history. So is it time for a change? Probably. Is this going to make a big difference? Well, this is going to do a couple things. It ties into trends that are already in place. We were already on a protein kick. I did a recording of the business of agriculture with a Rabobank global protein analyst about the consumption of protein. Right now, you go to the grocery store, processed food, feeling the footsteps of things like the new food pyramid, realize that consumption is about to decline. So that's why things like Cheerios are touting how much protein. You can't even buy a tube of toothpaste that doesn't try and tell you it contains protein. So I'm being facetious, of course. But the reality is protein trend was already in place, and this new inverted food pyramid, which capitalizes on, or shall I say, emphasizes consumption of proteins and real fat. That was already in place. Just last year, the dairy industry had a win that we're going to bring whole milk back to the schools. For 15 years ago, in 2010, Michelle Obama said that the kids were fat because of whole milk, so only skim milk could be served. One thing that does is gives the dairy industry a lot more fat to pull off and sell for things like butter, which is increasing in consumption. But more importantly, it makes a whole generation of kids not like milk because, for instance, if you've ever drank whole milk compared to skim milk, one of them, it tastes like white water. One of them actually has flavor and fills you up. So winners. Animal protein. Protein consumption will increase. It already was. This new food pyramid ties into a trend that was already in place. Lack of fear of fat. I told you this in another video about some positives for agriculture. Protein and fat are no longer the demons that they once were. Carbohydrates are going to be the loser. Processed food is going to be a loser, but they already were. I could make the argument that sugar is the new tobacco. Big loser is going to be sugar. Think about this. Roughly 5% of the American corn crop goes to sweeteners, most of it to high fructose corn syrup. And you're saying that's only 5%, Damian. 5% of 95 million acres is more acres in going of corn to sugar than all the sugar beets and sugar cane in the United States of America. Sugar is the new tobacco. It is going to continue to face an uphill battle given those numbers I gave you about obesity and diabetes. What else loses? Could be seed oils, predominantly soybean oil. A lot of our soybeans go to oil, as do canola, sunflower, corn oil, and a few other crops. They are going to continue to face a lot of pressure, as we just saw in this food pyramid. That could be an RFK Jr. thing. It could also be, again, the movement against processed food. So who's the winners, who's the losers? Animal protein is a winner. You can say, what about protein from those fake meat categories? Fake meat, fake milk, alternative dairy products, alternative protein, if you will, are already struggling. Beyond Meat is worth 4% of what it was in 2018, 2019, when the company was brand new. That's right. It's lost 96% of its value. Why? Because the consumer has spoken. The consumer does not want to buy that or eat that alternative meat at any level of scale. So the dietary guidelines. I've also heard, oh, well, this is all a political thing. There is a political component to this. That is true, but it has always been the case. In 2015, under President Barack Obama, there was a vegan on the committee to reset the dietary guidelines. I believe it was a professor from Tufts University who stated that Americans should eat less animal protein, not because of health reasons, but because of climate change. So this has always been somewhat politically bastardized and lobbied. It's not the first time. Anyway, it'll all change in 5 or 10 years. I'm here to tell you about the new one when it comes out again then. I'm Damian Mason. I speak all over the world and right here online about the world's most important industry, the business of agriculture.